My name is Amber Wilson, and at 34, I never expected to be publicly humiliated at a neighborhood barbecue. The words still ring in my ears. Stephanie Miller, with her perfect hair and designer sundress, tilted her wine glass toward me and laughed. At least my baby has a father. The silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, a single mother who worked 12-hour nursing shifts, while she smirked beside her husband Kyle. Little did she know that my 16-year-old son Ethan was about to uncover a truth that would shatter her perfect facade. If you're watching this, drop a comment letting me know where you're from, and don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons as I share how my son's discovery changed everything in our neighborhood. Life as a single mother isn't for the faint of heart. Most days start before dawn, as I prepare for my 12-hour shifts at Memorial Hospital. Nursing isn't just my career, it's our lifeline, providing the stability Ethan needs. I take pride in what I've built for us, even if it means missing sleep and working holidays. Our home isn't fancy, a modest 3-bedroom ranch on Oakwood Drive, but it's ours. The kitchen table has scratches from Ethan's science projects, and the living room couch has a permanent indent where we sit for our Friday movie nights. These imperfections tell our story, one of resilience and love. 3 years ago, we moved to Maple Creek Estates for the excellent school district. Ethan was entering high school, and I wanted to give him every advantage possible. Most neighbors welcomed us warmly. Jessica and Brian Taylor next door immediately invited us for dinner. The Patels across the street brought homemade samosas. Even Mr. Jenkins, the retired teacher at the corner, offered to help Ethan with math anytime. Then there were the Millers. Stephanie and Kyle Miller lived in the largest house on our street, a sprawling 2-story colonial with perfectly manicured gardens. Their twin boys, Jason and Aiden, were Ethan's classmates. From our first meeting at the neighborhood welcome party, Stephanie made it clear that we didn't belong in her social circle. "Nursing must be such rewarding work," she said during our introduction, her eyes traveling over my simple dress. Though I can't imagine having the energy for it. Kyle's job allows me to focus on the boys and my charity work. She emphasized charity while glancing at my shoes, as though I might need to be a recipient someday. That first interaction set the pattern. Whenever we crossed paths, Stephanie found subtle ways to highlight the differences in our lives. When she spotted me driving my 10-year-old Honda, "It's so practical to keep older cars running. We just got the new Tesla, and honestly, I miss the simplicity sometimes." When she saw me mowing my own lawn, "You're so capable, Amber." Kyle insists on hiring landscapers, but I admire your determination. Each comment came with the same saccharine smile that never reached her eyes. Yet publicly, she maintained the image of neighborhood welcome committee chair, occasionally inviting me to social gatherings where I'd inevitably feel out of place among women discussing vacation homes and country club memberships. Kyle Miller, by contrast, seemed perpetually uncomfortable. Tall with salt and pepper hair and designer glasses, he rarely contributed to conversations when Stephanie was present. He'd offer polite nods, his gaze often drifting elsewhere, as though mentally escaping. The few times we spoke alone, once when he helped me carry groceries during a rainstorm, he seemed almost normal, asking thoughtful questions about Ethan's interests and my work. "Nurses are the backbone of healthcare," he'd said genuinely. "My sister's a nurse practitioner in Boston. Toughest person I know." These glimpses of humanity made Stephanie's behavior all the more confusing. Ethan noticed everything. My son has always been perceptive, perhaps because it was just us against the world for so long. His father, Daniel, walked out when Ethan was 3, declaring family life too restricting. The monthly child support checks were his only contribution to raising our son. "Mom, why do you let Mrs. Miller talk to you like that?" Ethan asked after Stephanie made a pointed comment about single-parent households during a school fundraiser. "Some people need to feel superior," I explained. "The best response is living well and being kind anyway." Ethan didn't look convinced, but he respected my approach. That's something I've always tried to instill in him. Taking the high road isn't weakness, it's strength. Still, I saw the protective anger flare in his eyes whenever Stephanie directed her passive-aggressive comments my way. Despite her behavior, we built a good life in Maple Creek. Ethan thrived academically, joining the debate team and computer club. I made genuine friendships, particularly with Jessica Taylor, who worked as a physical therapist and understood the challenges of healthcare schedules. We established routines, traditions, and a sense of belonging. Then came the annual summer kickoff barbecue. The neighborhood association hosted this event every June in the community park. In previous years, I'd worked during it or made brief appearances. This year, Ethan insisted we attend properly. "You work too hard, Mom," he said. "You deserve some fun too. Plus, I need someone to brag about my AP scores to." He flashed that smile, the one that still showed the little boy beneath his increasingly adult features, and I couldn't refuse. I requested the day off, bought a new sundress, and prepared my mother's famous potato salad. Despite my misgivings about potential interactions with Stephanie, I was determined to enjoy this community event with my son. I couldn't have anticipated how that afternoon would ultimately change everything, not just for us, but for the Millers and the entire neighborhood. As we packed the car with our contribution to the potluck, neither Ethan nor I realized we were heading toward a confrontation that would unravel years of secrets and lies. The community park sparkled under perfect June sunshine as Ethan and I arrived at the barbecue. Red, white, and blue streamers decorated the pavilion, and the scent of grilling burgers filled the air. Children raced across the playground while teenagers clustered near the basketball courts. It was exactly the kind of all-American summer scene that belonged on a postcard. "I almost didn't come," I admitted to Ethan as we carried our cooler and potato salad toward the food tables. "I know," he replied, nudging my shoulder gently. "But look, Mrs. Taylor is waving us over, and I spotted Jake and Miguel by the courts. This will be good for both of us." He was right. Jessica Taylor immediately enveloped me in a warm hug while her husband Brian took our contributions. "So glad you made it, Amber." "I saved seats at our table," Jessica said, linking her arm through mine. "The hospital's been working you too hard. We've barely had time for coffee this month." Jessica's friendship had been a blessing since we moved to the neighborhood. Unlike Stephanie and her country club friends, Jessica never made me feel like my single mother status or career defined my worth. "Ethan, go ahead with your friends," I encouraged, seeing him glance toward the basketball courts. "Just be back for food in 30 minutes. As Ethan jogged off, I settled into the comfortable conversation with Jessica and other neighbors. Tom and Diana Peterson discussed their upcoming anniversary trip. Carlos Rodriguez proudly showed pictures of his daughter's college graduation. For over an hour, I actually relaxed, laughing and contributing to the conversation without feeling like an outsider. Then Stephanie arrived. The Millers were fashionably late, of course. Stephanie wore a crisp white sundress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the summer humidity. Kyle followed with their twin boys, carrying an elaborate charcuterie platter that made my homemade potato salad look decidedly humble. "Sorry we're late, everyone," Stephanie announced, air-kissing cheeks around the pavilion. Board meeting ran long, then we had to stop by the club to confirm our summer reservation. She made her way through the gathering, Kyle trailing behind with an expression I couldn't quite read, somewhere between exhaustion and resignation. When she reached our table, she greeted Jessica warmly before her gaze landed on me. "Amber, what a surprise. I don't think I've ever seen you at one of these events for more than 10 minutes. Finally got a day off from the hospital." Before I could respond, Jessica interjected. "Amber's potato salad is already half gone. You should try some before it disappears." "I'll stick to my protein-forward diet, but thanks," Stephanie replied with a dismissive wave. "Kyle, why don't you get me a sparkling water?" As the afternoon progressed, I successfully avoided direct interaction with Stephanie. The community had grown large enough that mingling allowed for natural separation. Ethan returned for food, proudly introducing me to some new friends from the debate team. I noticed Jason Miller, one of Stephanie's twins, hovering near Ethan's group, though they didn't seem to interact directly. The trouble began during dessert. Several of us had gathered around a table near the grill area. The conversation had turned to summer plans and the challenges of entertaining children during school break. I've arranged tennis lessons, coding camp, and a Spanish immersion program, Stephanie explained, now on her third glass of wine. It's exhausting coordinating their schedules, but that's motherhood, right? Diana Peterson laughed. My kids would revolt. They want nothing but video games and pool time. Well, proper structure is essential for development, Stephanie continued. Children need consistency and guidance from both parents. I felt her eyes flick toward me, but kept my expression neutral as I helped distribute slices of Jessica's homemade apple pie. Single-parent households can provide plenty of structure too, Carlos commented casually. My sister raised my niece alone, and she's at Stanford now. That's the exception, not the rule, Stephanie replied, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she used when making pronouncements about proper living. Studies clearly show children thrive with two active parents. It's simply biological. The conversation grew increasingly uncomfortable as Stephanie continued her thinly veiled commentary on family structures. I noticed Kyle staring into his untouched beer, his discomfort palpable as his wife expounded on proper parenting. I was preparing a polite exit when Ethan approached our table, asking if he could go to the convenience store with friends for sodas. Oh, Amber, your son is getting so tall, Stephanie exclaimed, as though noticing him for the first time. You must be so proud managing on your own. It can't be easy without a father figure. Several people shifted uncomfortably. Kyle finally looked up, a flash of something, shame, crossing his face. Ethan has many positive role models, I replied evenly. And we're doing just fine. Perhaps it was the wine, or perhaps she'd simply waited for the perfect audience, but Stephanie's carefully maintained veneer of politeness finally cracked. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound, and gestured with her wine glass. Well, at least my babies have a father. The words hung in the air like smoke. Conversations around us halted. Kyle's face drained of color. Jessica gasped softly beside me. Ethan, still standing behind me, went completely still. I felt his hand grip the back of my chair. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Every insecurity I'd ever felt as a single mother crashed over me in waves. Years of working double shifts, attending school events alone, teaching Ethan to shave, fixing the car myself, stretching budgets until they broke, all reduced to a cruel punchline about my perceived inadequacy. Kyle finally spoke. Stephanie, that's enough. His voice was quiet, but tight with anger. What? I'm just stating facts, she replied, the wine making her bolder. Children need fathers. That's not controversial. I stood slowly, gathering my purse and phone. Thank you for the lovely afternoon, everyone. I think it's time for us to head home. Mom, Ethan started, his voice shaking with anger. It's okay, I interrupted, placing my hand on his arm. Let's go. Jessica stood too. Amber, don't leave. Stephanie's had too much wine. But I couldn't stay. Not with every eye on me, a mixture of pity and discomfort in their gazes. Not with Stephanie's words echoing in my ears. Not with the burning humiliation threatening to spill over into tears I refused to shed publicly. Really, it's fine. I have an early shift tomorrow anyway, I lied, my voice remarkably steady. Ethan, please. As we walked away, I heard Jessica berating Stephanie and Kyle's mumbled apologies to the group. None of it mattered. All I wanted was the sanctuary of our modest home, where single parenthood wasn't a failure, but a triumph of love and perseverance. The drive home passed in tense silence. Ethan stared out the window, his jaw clenched, while I focused on breathing evenly, pushing back the tears until we were safely behind closed doors. She had no right to say that, Ethan finally said as we pulled into our driveway. No right at all. No, she didn't, I agreed, turning off the engine. But how we respond to cruelty says more about us than the cruel person. Ethan's expression hardened in a way I'd never seen before. Sometimes, Mom, the high road just looks like letting people walk all over you. With that, he got out of the car and headed inside, leaving me to wonder if perhaps, this time, my son was right. Sunday morning, I woke to the familiar scent of coffee brewing. Ethan had beaten me to the kitchen and stood at the counter scrambling eggs, his back unusually rigid with tension. You didn't have to make breakfast, I said, reaching for a mug. Wanted to. His response was clipped, focused on the task at hand. We ate mostly in silence, the events of yesterday's barbecue hanging between us like a storm cloud. I'd spent half the night replaying Stephanie's comment, vacillating between hurt, anger, and a determination not to let her cruelty affect me. "I've been thinking," I finally said. "Maybe we should host a small gathering here soon. Jessica and Brian, the Rodriguezes, maybe some of your debate friends. Show everyone that we're doing just fine." Ethan looked up from his plate. "You don't have to prove anything to these people, Mom. Especially not to Stephanie Miller. It's not about proving something. It's about not letting someone else's nastiness change how we live our lives." He studied me for a moment. "Are you really okay?" The question caught me off guard. For 16 years, I'd been the strong one, the steady presence Ethan could rely on. I rarely showed him my vulnerabilities or struggles. "I won't pretend it didn't hurt," I admitted. "But I've dealt with worse than some wine-drunk housewife's opinion of my parenting." Ethan nodded slowly. "You're the best mom anyone could ask for. That's what matters." His words warmed me, but I noticed something guarded in his expression, as though he was keeping something to himself. That afternoon, I threw myself into housework, scrubbing floors, organizing closets, anything to keep my mind occupied. When my phone chimed with a text from Jessica asking if I was all right, I assured her I was fine and changed the subject to her upcoming birthday. Work provided welcome distraction on Monday and Tuesday. My colleagues at the hospital knew nothing of neighborhood drama, and the demands of the medical surgical floor left little time for dwelling on personal insults. I mentioned nothing about the barbecue incident, not wanting to cast myself as a victim. It was Tuesday evening when I first noticed Ethan's unusual behavior. He'd been in his room since dinner, door slightly ajar, his voice carrying in fragments as he spoke on the phone. "Are you sure about this?" A pause. "No, I get it. It's just, this is big, man." When he emerged later for a snack, I casually asked, "Everything okay with your friends?" "Yeah, just project stuff," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. Wednesday brought more secretive phone conversations and text messages that made him frown at his screen. Thursday, he came home an hour late from debate practice, offering a vague explanation about helping a friend with computer issues. By Friday, my nursing instincts were on high alert. Ethan had always been open with me, our relationship built on honest communication through the years when it was just the two of us against the world. This sudden secretiveness felt wrong. After dinner, I decided direct questioning was necessary. "Ethan, I need you to be straight with me. What's going on? You've been acting strangely all week." He looked up from his laptop, conflicted. "Nothing bad, Mom. I promise." "Does this have something to do with the barbecue?" With Stephanie Miller's comment. His slight flinch told me I'd hit the mark. "Tell me you're not planning some kind of revenge," I pressed. "That's not who we are, Ethan. That's not who I raised you to be." "It's not revenge exactly," he hedged. "But she shouldn't have said that to you. She shouldn't get to act superior when." He stopped abruptly. "When what?" "Just trust me, okay? You'll see, Mom. She shouldn't have said that." His cryptic response worried me more than outright admission would have. I considered grounding him or confiscating his phone, but at 16, such measures seemed more likely to damage our relationship than solve the problem. Instead, I reminded him of our values. "Whatever you're planning or whatever you know, remember that hurting others, even those who hurt us, doesn't make anything better. It just creates more pain." He nodded, but I wasn't convinced I'd reached him. Saturday evening, everything changed. I was folding laundry in the living room while Ethan finished a history paper in his room. The house was quiet except for the occasional ping of his phone receiving messages. Around 9 o'clock, he appeared in the doorway, his expression a mixture of determination and apprehension. "Mom, I need to show you something." He sat beside me on the couch, his phone clutched tightly in his hand. For a moment, he just stared at it, as though reconsidering his decision. "What is it, Ethan? You're scaring me a little." With a deep breath, he unlocked his screen and handed me the phone. "Jason Miller showed me these on Tuesday. I've been trying to figure out what to do." I looked down at the screen and felt my stomach drop. There, in vivid color, were screenshots from a dating app, specifically, a dating app for men seeking men. The profile showed Kyle Miller, Stephanie's perfect husband, his face clearly visible though he'd attempted discretion by angling the camera. Multiple screenshots followed, conversations between Kyle and various men, arrangements to meet, exchanges that made it abundantly clear this wasn't some misunderstanding or prank. "Oh my God," I whispered, suddenly understanding Ethan's strange behavior. How did Jason get these? He borrowed his dad's phone to order pizza and notifications kept coming in. He got suspicious and figured out the password. Ethan's voice was steady but quiet. Jason's really messed up about it. That's why I've been talking to him so much. He doesn't know what to do, and he doesn't want to tell his mom. I set the phone down, my mind racing. And he showed these to you because of what happened at the barbecue. He was there, Mom. He heard what his mother said to you. He thought you should know she's not so perfect after all. The irony wasn't lost on me. Stephanie Miller, who'd publicly humiliated me for being a single mother, had a husband living a double life right under her nose. Ethan, this is... I struggled to find appropriate words. This is very private information about Mr. Miller. Information that could destroy his family if handled carelessly. Exactly. She deserves to know what a hypocrite she is, judging our family when her own is built on lies. The vindictive satisfaction in my son's voice alarmed me. This wasn't the compassionate young man I'd raised. "Listen to me very carefully," I said, taking his hands in mine. "What Mrs. Miller said was cruel and unfair. But this..." I gestured to the phone. "This isn't about her. This is about a man who's clearly struggling with his identity and living inauthentically. This is about two boys who might have their world shattered. This isn't ammunition for revenge, Ethan. It's a human tragedy." His expression shifted as my words sank in. "So we just do nothing? Let her keep treating you like garbage while her husband sneaks around?" I didn't say that. But whatever happens next needs to come from a place of integrity, not vengeance. I paused, considering our options. "Have you or Jason confronted Mr. Miller?" "No," Ethan admitted. "Jason's too freaked out. He doesn't know if his mom knows, or what it means for their family. He just wanted someone else to know, I think. Someone outside." I nodded slowly, understanding the burden my son had been carrying all week. "Thank you for trusting me with this. We need to think very carefully about the right thing to do." As I looked at Kyle Miller's secret life displayed on my son's phone, I realized we'd stumbled into something far more complicated than neighborhood politics or petty insults. This was about real lives, real pain, and potentially devastating consequences. Whatever decision we made would need to reflect the kind of people we wanted to be, not in moments of triumph, but in moments when we held others' fate in our hands. Sunday morning found me staring at the ceiling, sleep having eluded me most of the night. The revelation about Kyle Miller had opened a Pandora's box of ethical questions I wasn't prepared to answer. Part of me, a small, wounded part one wasn't proud of, felt vindicated. Stephanie's perfect life was a carefully constructed facade. Her cruel comment about my son lacking a father figure seemed even more ironic now, given her husband's secret life. But the larger part of me recognized the human suffering behind these screenshots. Kyle, living a lie that must have been suffocating. Stephanie, potentially oblivious to her husband's true identity. Their sons, especially Jason, caught in the middle of an adult situation no teenager should have to navigate alone. When Ethan shuffled into the kitchen around 9, I had coffee waiting and pancakes on the griddle. "You look like you didn't sleep," he observed, dropping into a chair. I had a lot to think about. I slid a plate in front of him. "We need to talk more about those screenshots and how Jason got them." Ethan poked at his breakfast. "I already told you. The dating app notifications kept coming in when he was ordering pizza on his dad's phone." "And then what?" "He just started exploring the app." "Well, yeah. Wouldn't you, if you saw something weird on someone's phone?" I raised an eyebrow. "Actually, no. Privacy still matters, even in families. But let me finish. I understand why Jason looked. He's 16, and it was surprising. What concerns me is how those screenshots ended up on your phone and what you and Jason plan to do with them." Ethan had the grace to look uncomfortable. Jason just wanted advice. He texted them to me because he didn't know who else to talk to. His brother Aiden worships their dad and would freak out. And what advice did you give him? I told him he should talk to his dad directly, Ethan said, surprising me. But he's scared. Then after thinking about it more, I thought maybe his mom should know. After what she said to you. I took a deep breath. Ethan, I need you to really hear me. Using someone's sexuality, especially when they're clearly not open about it, as a weapon to hurt them or others is never acceptable. Never. But no. What Stephanie said was cruel and ignorant. But exposing Kyle's private struggles to get back at her would be cruel too. Two wrongs don't make a right, that's kindergarten ethics. Ethan stared at his plate. So we just pretend we don't know? Let Jason deal with this alone. His question struck at the heart of my dilemma. Doing nothing didn't feel right either. No, I finally said. I think I need to talk to Kyle. Ethan's head snapped up. What? Why? Because right now, a 16-year-old boy has discovered something explosive about his father and doesn't know what to do. Because that information is spreading, Jason told you, you told me, and who knows who else might find out. Because Kyle deserves to know his privacy has been compromised. He'll just deny it. Maybe. But at least he'll be aware of the situation. I paused, considering. How is Jason handling this? Ethan's expression softened with concern for his friend. Not great. He keeps asking me if I think his dad loves their family at all, or if everything's been fake. He's angry, but also scared. He doesn't want his parents to get divorced. This glimpse of empathy from my son reassured me. Despite his initial desire for revenge against Stephanie, he genuinely cared about Jason's well-being. Will you ask Jason if it's okay for me to speak with his father? I won't mention the screenshots unless Kyle forces my hand, but I think a conversation is necessary. Ethan looked dubious, but nodded. I'll text him now. While he contacted Jason, I cleared the breakfast dishes, my mind working through how to approach such a delicate conversation. I'd never been particularly close to Kyle Miller, our interactions limited to neighborhood functions and occasional small talk. Broaching the subject of his secret dating profile would be incredibly awkward at best, potentially explosive at worst. By afternoon, we had our answer. Jason, apparently relieved to share the burden with an adult, had agreed to my intervention, but begged me not to tell Stephanie. He said his dad is taking his brother to a baseball game tomorrow, so his mom will be home alone if you want to talk to her instead, Ethan reported. No, I said firmly. This conversation needs to be with Kyle first. Stephanie shouldn't hear this from a neighbor. I decided a neutral location would be best, somewhere private enough for a sensitive conversation, but public enough to keep the interaction civil. After considering my options, I sent Kyle a text message. Kyle, this is Amber Wilson from down the street. I need to speak with you about something important. Could we meet for coffee tomorrow after work? Baker's Brew around 5:30. His response came surprisingly quickly. Is everything okay? Does this concern Stephanie's comment at the barbecue? I've already spoken to her about that. It's related, but not exactly about that, I replied. It's something that requires a face-to-face conversation. After a longer pause, all right. Baker's Brew at 5:30 tomorrow. With the meeting set, I spent the rest of Sunday wrestling with how to approach the conversation. Every scenario I imagined seemed inadequate for the complexity of the situation. You're doing the right thing, Mom, Ethan said that evening, finding me staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Am I? Sometimes I wonder if we should just stay out of other people's business entirely. That's what you'd normally say, he acknowledged. But this is different. Jason's involved now. And he's scared. I nodded, recognizing the truth in his words. This wasn't just about Stephanie's rudeness or Kyle's secrets anymore. It was about two teenagers caught in an adult situation they weren't equipped to handle. Just promise me something, I said, turning to face my son. No matter what happens tomorrow, no matter how the Millers react, we will behave with integrity. We won't use this information as a weapon. We won't spread gossip. We will be the kind of people who care more about doing right than being right. Ethan held my gaze for a long moment before nodding. I promise. As I tried to sleep that night, I thought about how parenting constantly presents unexpected moral challenges. I taught Ethan about honesty, kindness, and integrity through everyday lessons and examples. Now, we faced a situation with no clear ethical path, where every possible action carried potential for both help and harm. Tomorrow's conversation with Kyle Miller would test everything I believed about compassion, justice, and the complicated humanity behind every facade. I could only hope that when faced with this moral crossroads, I would choose wisdom over vindication, kindness over righteousness. Because ultimately, the measure of successful parenting isn't in raising children who never face difficult ethical dilemmas, it's in raising children who approach those dilemmas with both compassion and courage. Monday afternoon arrived with oppressive humidity that matched the weight of my impending conversation. I changed out of my nursing scrubs into a simple blouse and jeans, wanting to appear approachable rather than confrontational for my meeting with Kyle. "Text me when you're on your way home," Ethan said as I grabbed my purse. His expression betrayed both curiosity and concern. "I will. Remember what we discussed, discretion and compassion, no matter what happens." Baker's Brew sat halfway between our neighborhood and downtown, far enough that we wouldn't likely encounter other neighbors. The coffee shop's industrial chic interior offered both open seating and more private nooks. I arrived 10 minutes early and claimed a corner table partially screened by a bookshelf. Kyle arrived precisely at 5:30, looking nothing like the polished professional who appeared at neighborhood functions. His normally neat hair seemed hastily combed, his button-down shirt slightly wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he carried tension in his shoulders as he scanned the cafe. I raised my hand slightly, catching his attention. As he approached, I noticed him calculating who might see us together. "Thanks for meeting me," I said as he slid into the chair across from me. "Can I get you a coffee?" "I'm fine," he replied stiffly. "What's this about, Amber?" "Your message was concerning." I'd rehearsed my opening a dozen times, but now, facing Kyle's obvious anxiety, my carefully prepared words evaporated. Direct honesty seemed the only appropriate approach. "Kyle, this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation, and I apologize for that. I want you to know I'm not here to judge or threaten you. I'm here because a situation has developed that you need to be aware of." His expression shifted from guarded to alarmed. "What situation?" I lowered my voice. "Your son Jason borrowed your phone last week to order pizza. While he had it, he saw notifications from a dating app. He investigated further and discovered your profile and conversations with other men." The color drained from Kyle's face. For a moment, I thought he might pass out or bolt from the cafe. His hands, wrapped around the empty mug in front of him, began to tremble slightly. That's ridiculous," he finally managed, his denial unconvincing even to himself. "Jason must be confused about what he saw." "Kyle," I said gently. Jason took screenshots. He was upset and confused, so he shared them with Ethan, who eventually showed them to me. "I'm not here to expose you or threaten you. I'm here because your son is struggling with this discovery, and because you should know that this information is no longer completely private." He closed his eyes briefly, the facade of denial crumbling. When he looked at me again, I saw naked fear. "Who else knows?" he whispered. "As far as I'm aware, only Jason, Ethan, and myself." Jason specifically asked that Stephanie not be told, at least not yet. Kyle's shoulders sagged with momentary relief, followed by visible shame. "My God. My son." His voice cracked. "What must he think of me?" The raw pain in his voice touched me. Whatever judgment I might have harbored dissolved in the face of his obvious anguish. "He's confused and hurt," I answered honestly. "But mostly, I think he's worried about what this means for your family." Kyle stared at the table, silent tears welling in his eyes. The carefully constructed image of the successful businessman with the perfect family had completely vanished, revealing a man drowning in secrets. "I never wanted anyone to find out like this," he finally said. "Especially not Jason." "God, what have I done? May I ask you something?" I ventured carefully. When he nodded, I continued. "How long have you been living this double life?" Kyle wiped his eyes with a napkin, glancing around to ensure no one was watching his breakdown. The app is recent, maybe 6 months. But knowing who I really am, he gave a hollow laugh. Forever. Since before I married Stephanie. I thought I could make it work. My family is very traditional, very religious. When I met Stephanie in college, she represented everything my parents wanted for me. She was beautiful, ambitious, from the right kind of family. We got along well as friends. I convinced myself that was enough. But it wasn't, I said softly. No. But by then, we had the boys, the house, our position in the community. Stephanie's entire identity is wrapped up in our perfect family image. I couldn't destroy that. I couldn't hurt the boys. He looked up, desperation in his eyes. I love my sons, Amber. Whatever you think of me, please believe that. I do believe you, I assured him. But Kyle, secrets this big have a way of coming out eventually. Jason already knows. That can't be undone. He nodded miserably. I always told myself I'd wait until the boys were in college. That I'd have some grand conversation with Stephanie then, and we'd figure it out like adults. Stupid, right? Just kicking the can down the road. We sat in silence for a moment. A barista called out drink orders. The afternoon crowd chatted around us, oblivious to the life-altering conversation happening in our corner. What are you going to do now? I finally asked. Kyle ran a hand through his hair. I have to talk to Jason. That's the first priority. Then, he trailed off, the enormity of his situation seemingly overwhelming him. Then Stephanie, I finished for him. She'll be devastated. Humiliated. Furious. He listed the emotions flatly. And she'll have every right to be. I've lied to her for our entire marriage. May I make an observation? When he nodded, I continued carefully. At the barbecue, Stephanie made that comment about Ethan not having a father. I've been wondering if perhaps, on some level, she suspects something isn't right in your marriage. Kyle considered this. Maybe. We haven't had a real marriage in years, not in the physical sense. I thought she accepted that as normal for long-term couples, but sometimes I catch her looking at me with such disappointment. People often lash out at others when they're insecure about their own situations, I suggested. That doesn't excuse her comment, but it might explain it. That's generous of you, considering how she treated you. Kyle looked at me with newfound respect. Most people would be planning how to use this information for revenge. That's not who I want to be. And it's not who I'm teaching my son to be. Kyle nodded slowly. Thank you for coming to me directly. You could have handled this very differently. What are you going to do, Kyle? Jason is waiting for some kind of resolution. He straightened his shoulders slightly, a glimmer of resolve appearing through his distress. I'll talk to Jason tonight. Then, he took a deep breath. Then I need to have an honest conversation with Stephanie this weekend. It's time to stop living a lie, whatever the consequences. That sounds like the right approach, I agreed. But Kyle, may I suggest something? These dating apps, maybe hold off on that activity until after you've addressed things with your family. Jason has screenshots, and if Stephanie were to see them. God, yes. I deleted the app after the barbecue, actually. He looked ashamed again. Guilt, I suppose. But the damage was already done. As our conversation wound down, Kyle appeared simultaneously devastated and relieved, a man who'd carried a crushing secret for decades, finally glimpsing the possibility of authenticity, however painful the transition might be. Amber, he said as we prepared to leave, why did you do this? After how Stephanie has treated you, you could have just watched our family implode. Why help me navigate this instead? I considered his question carefully. Because underneath all our differences, all our social posturing and neighborhood politics, we're just people trying to find happiness and meaning. Your family matters, Kyle. Your son's well-being matters. And your authentic life matters too. He nodded, blinking back tears. I'll text you after I talk to Jason. And Amber, thank you. As I drove home, I felt oddly lighter despite the heaviness of our conversation. I'd chosen compassion over vengeance, understanding over judgment. Whatever happened next with the Millers, I knew I'd approach the situation with integrity. What I couldn't anticipate was how quickly events would spiral beyond anyone's control, or how deeply our two families would become intertwined in the aftermath. Tuesday passed uneventfully, with no word from Kyle or Jason. I assumed they were having difficult but necessary conversations and deliberately kept Ethan occupied with a movie night to give them space. Wednesday morning, however, brought the first ripple of the coming storm. Jessica Taylor called while I was getting ready for work. "Have you heard about Stephanie's party?" she asked without preamble. "What party?" "She's hosting a last-minute dinner tomorrow night. Everyone on the street is invited except you. She made a point of telling me not to mention it to you, which is exactly why I'm calling." I sighed, leaning against the bathroom counter. I'm not surprised. Things have been tense since the barbecue. "It's more than that," Jessica continued, lowering her voice though no one could overhear her. "She's been saying things, Amber, implying you've been inappropriate with Kyle." "What?" The accusation was so unexpected I actually laughed. "That's ridiculous." "I know that. But she told Diane Peterson she saw Kyle's car near your neighborhood last week and that you've been texting him privately." "Our coffee shop meeting." "Of course. Someone must have spotted us, or perhaps Kyle's location had been visible to Stephanie through some family tracking app." "Jessica, I can't explain right now, but I promise there's nothing inappropriate happening between Kyle and me." "You don't have to convince me," she assured me. "I just wanted you to know what she's saying. Brian and I declined the dinner invitation, by the way. We're not participating in whatever drama she's creating." After hanging up, I quickly texted Kyle, "Stephanie is telling neighbors we're having an affair. You may want to address this before rumors spread further." His response came hours later, while I was at work. "I'm aware. It's complicated. We'll handle it." Not exactly reassuring. By Thursday evening, the situation had deteriorated further. Ethan came home from debate practice visibly upset. "Aiden Miller told everyone you're trying to break up his parents," he reported, dropping his backpack with unusual force. "He cornered me after school and said his mom found texts proving you've been going after his dad." My heart sank. "Ethan, you know that's not true." "Of course I know that. But now half the debate team is looking at me weird, and Jason isn't even speaking to me anymore." He grabbed a soda from the refrigerator, his movements sharp with frustration. "This is exactly why we should have just shown Stephanie the screenshots in the first place. That would have been wrong, and you know it." "Well, this is wrong too. She's spreading lies about you, Mom. Doesn't that bother you?" Before I could respond, my phone rang, an unknown number. "Is this Amber Wilson?" a woman's voice demanded when I answered. "Yes, who's?" "This is Dr. Laramie from Riverdale Medical Group. We've received some concerning information about your professional conduct that I'd like to discuss." My blood ran cold. Riverdale Medical was a competing hospital system where I'd never worked. "I think there's been a mistake," I said carefully. "I'm not employed by Riverdale. We've received reports that you're accessing patient information inappropriately and discussing confidential medical details with non-medical personnel. If these allegations are true, we'll be obligated to report you to the nursing board." The accusation was so outrageous, I nearly dropped the phone. "I don't know who provided that information, but it's completely false. I've never worked for Riverdale, never accessed your systems, and would never violate patient confidentiality." After several more minutes of increasingly bizarre questioning, I realized what had happened. "Did Stephanie Miller contact you with these allegations?" The momentary silence confirmed my suspicion. "I'm sorry you've been drawn into a personal dispute," I said professionally. "But I assure you I've done nothing unethical or illegal. If you receive further allegations, I'd appreciate being notified before any reports are filed." After ending the call, I explained the situation to a horrified Ethan. "She's trying to get you fired? That's insane." "She's lashing out because she's scared," I reasoned, though my own anger was building. "She suspects something's happening in her marriage, and she's looking for someone to blame." "So, what do we do now?" That was the question, wasn't it? Stephanie had escalated from petty neighborhood slights to potentially damaging my professional reputation. The high road was becoming increasingly difficult to navigate. "I'm going to call Kyle again," I decided. "This needs to stop before it gets even worse." But Kyle didn't answer my calls or respond to my increasingly urgent texts. By Friday morning, with still no word from him, I decided more direct action was necessary. The Miller house stood imposing at the end of our street, its manicured lawn and professional landscaping a stark contrast to the more modest homes around it. I rarely approached it, but now I walked purposefully up the stone pathway and rang the doorbell. Stephanie answered almost immediately, as though she'd been waiting for confrontation. Her carefully applied makeup couldn't quite hide the redness around her eyes or the tightness in her expression. "You have some nerve showing up here," she hissed, not opening the door fully. "Stephanie, we need to talk. You've been spreading rumors about me that could damage my professional reputation. That crosses a line." "You crossed a line when you started meeting my husband behind my back," she countered. "Did you think I wouldn't find out? That tracker app on his phone shows everywhere he goes. It's not what you think." "Kyle and I met once, in public, to discuss a family matter." She laughed bitterly. "A family matter? That's rich. We both know what you're doing. The lonely nurse from down the street, always watching our family, envying what we have. Well, you can't have it. Kyle would never leave me for someone like you." Her words were meant to wound, but they only confirmed my suspicion that Stephanie's cruelty stemmed from profound insecurity. "Stephanie, I'm not interested in your husband. The truth is—" "I don't want to hear your version of the truth," she interrupted. "Just stay away from my family. And if I hear you've been spreading rumors about us, I'll make sure everyone at your hospital knows what kind of person you really are." With that, she slammed the door in my face, leaving me standing on her perfect porch with no resolution and growing concern about how far she might take this vendetta. The situation reached crisis point that very night. Ethan and I were watching a movie, both of us trying to distract ourselves from the neighborhood drama, when a sharp knock interrupted our evening. It was nearly 11, far too late for casual visitors. Through the peephole, I saw Kyle Miller standing on our porch. Even in the dim porch light, I could see something was terribly wrong. His left eye was swelling, a dark bruise forming on his cheekbone, and he clutched a hastily packed suitcase. "Oh my God," I gasped, opening the door. "What happened?" "I told her everything," he said simply, his voice hollow. "She didn't take it well." Ethan appeared behind me, eyes widening at Kyle's appearance. "Did Mrs. Miller do that to your face?" Kyle nodded slowly. "Crystal vase. She has good aim." "Come inside," I said, medical training kicking in. "Let me look at that eye." As Kyle stepped into our living room, the full impact of what was happening hit me. Stephanie's husband, the source of all her pride and social standing, was standing in my home with a black eye and a suitcase. Nothing could be more scandalous in our gossip-prone neighborhood. "I'm sorry to show up like this," Kyle said as I examined his injury. "I didn't know where else to go. Jason is staying at a friend's house, and Aiden refused to leave with me. I can't face a hotel right now. Just people seeing me like this." "You need ice for that eye," I said, professional mode taking over. "Ethan, can you get an ice pack from the freezer?" While Ethan went to the kitchen, I helped Kyle to the couch. "What exactly happened?" "I try to follow your advice. Wait until the weekend. Sit her down calmly. But then she confronted me about meeting you, showed me the tracking data on her phone. She was convinced we were having an affair. And you told her the truth instead, I guessed." He nodded miserably. "Everything came out. The dating app. The men I've met. 20 years of living a lie. She didn't believe me at first. Thought I was making it up to cover the affair. Then when she realized I was serious," he gestured to his face, "things got physical. She said she'd destroy me, take everything, make sure the boys never speak to me again." Ethan returned with the ice pack, his expression a mixture of shock and concern. I wrapped the pack in a thin towel and handed it to Kyle. "You can stay in our guest room tonight," I said, making a quick decision. "It's not much, but it's private and you'll be safe." "I can't impose." "You're not imposing. It's one night. Tomorrow you can figure out next steps with a clearer head." Kyle looked at me with profound gratitude. "Thank you, Amber. You have every reason to turn me away after how Stephanie has treated you, especially now." "That's not who we are," I said simply, echoing the values I'd been trying to instill in Ethan. "Come on, I'll show you the guest room." As I settled Kyle into our modest spare bedroom, I was acutely aware of how this would appear to outsiders, particularly to Stephanie. Her husband, fleeing their home after a physical altercation, taking refuge with the very woman she'd accused of trying to steal him. Sometimes doing the right thing meant accepting that others would misinterpret your actions. Tonight, compassion mattered more than appearances. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but for now, offering safety to someone in crisis was the only choice I could live with. What I didn't realize was that by morning, the entire neighborhood would be aware of Kyle's location, and Stephanie Miller would be on my doorstep, demanding to confront her husband in a showdown that would change everything. Saturday morning dawned bright and uncomfortably hot, the kind of summer day where the air feels heavy even before the sun fully rises. I'd slept poorly, worried about Kyle in our guest room and anticipating the neighborhood fallout that would inevitably follow. I found Ethan already in the kitchen, making coffee with unusual concentration. "Is Mr. Miller still here?" he asked quietly. "Yes. I checked on him earlier. His eye looks worse this morning, but the swelling isn't dangerous." Ethan nodded, handing me a mug. "Mom, people are talking. I just got texts from 3 different friends asking if Mr. Miller is really staying with us." I sighed, unsurprised but disappointed. News travels fast. What do I tell them? The truth. Mr. Miller needed a safe place to stay last night, and we helped someone in need. That's all anyone needs to know. He seemed satisfied with this response, and we settled into a strangely normal Saturday morning routine. Ethan working on summer reading, me catching up on household paperwork. Kyle emerged around 9, his left eye now a spectacular purple, and accepted coffee with quiet thanks. "I've called a realtor friend about short-term rentals," he told me. "I should be out of your hair by this afternoon." "There's no rush," I assured him. "Have you spoken with Jason?" "Briefly, by text. He's staying with his debate team friend for the weekend." Aiden won't respond to my messages. Pain flickered across his face that had nothing to do with his physical injury. The relative calm of our morning was shattered at precisely 10:17 a.m. when furious pounding rattled our front door. "I know he's in there." Stephanie's voice carried clearly through the door and probably to the neighboring houses as well. "Kyle, get out here right now." Kyle froze, coffee mug halfway to his lips. Ethan looked to me for direction. "Let me handle this," I said calmly, though my heart raced. "Ethan, please stay here with Mr. Miller." I approached the door with forced composure and opened it to find Stephanie Miller on my porch, mascara streaked down her face, designer sunglasses pushed up into her disheveled blonde hair. Several neighbors had emerged from their homes, pretending to check mail or water plants while watching the drama unfold. "Where is he?" she demanded, trying to look past me into the house. "Stephanie, this isn't the best way to handle." "Don't you dare tell me how to handle my husband leaving me for another man," she shouted, loud enough for everyone within half a block to hear. "And don't pretend you didn't know. You've been helping him behind my back." The raw pain in her voice momentarily overshadowed her anger. Despite everything she'd done, the cruel comments, the rumors, the threats to my career, I felt a wave of compassion for the woman whose entire identity had just imploded. "Please come inside," I said quietly. "You don't want to do this in public." For a moment I thought she'd refuse, but something in my expression must have reached her. She gave a jerky nod and stepped across my threshold, her rigid posture communicating that this was a temporary concession. Kyle stood in the living room, Ethan slightly behind him in a protective stance that made my heart swell with pride. The sight of her husband's bruised face seemed to momentarily stun Stephanie. "Ethan, please go to your room," I said. "But Mom, please." With obvious reluctance, he disappeared down the hallway, though I suspected he'd be listening carefully. "You should be ashamed," Stephanie began, focusing on Kyle. "Running to the neighborhood charity case after what you've done to our family." "Stephanie," Kyle said tiredly, "Amber has shown me more kindness in the past week than you have in years. Don't attack her for being decent." "Decent?" She laughed bitterly. "Is that what you call hiding a cheating husband? Helping him maintain his lies?" "I never cheated on you," Kyle insisted. "Not with women. Not with Amber. Just with men," she spat. As if that makes it better. The tension in the room was suffocating. I stepped forward, keeping my voice deliberately calm. "Stephanie, I understand you're hurt and angry. You have every right to be. But I need you to know that I've never been romantically involved with Kyle. I only learned about his situation recently, through our sons. This caught her attention. What do you mean, through our sons? Kyle sighed. Jason found my dating app. He was confused and shared it with Ethan, who eventually told Amber. She met with me to let me know our son had discovered my secret. That's all. Stephanie's eyes widened, new understanding dawning. Jason knows? How long has he known? Almost 2 weeks, Kyle admitted. I spoke with him about it Wednesday night. That's why he's staying with Andrew this weekend. And Aiden. I told him yesterday before things escalated between us. Stephanie sank onto my couch, the fight suddenly draining from her. In that moment, she wasn't the perfect, polished neighbor who'd made my life difficult. She was just a woman whose life had shattered in an instant. 20 years, she whispered. 20 years of marriage, and it was all a lie. Not all of it, Kyle said, sitting carefully on the opposite end of the couch. I do care about you, Stephanie. I always have. And I love our boys more than anything. Then why? Her voice cracked. Why marry me at all if you knew you were gay? I thought I could make it work. My family, your family, they had such expectations. And parts of our relationship were good. I convinced myself it was enough. He stared at his hands. I was wrong. I hurt you and I'm sorry. I stood awkwardly in my own living room, feeling like an intruder in this intensely personal moment between husband and wife. I started to step away, to give them privacy, when Stephanie's next words stopped me. And you, she said, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. You knew all this and didn't tell me. You let me make a fool of myself accusing you of having an affair with my gay husband. It wasn't my truth to tell, I replied simply. Kyle needed to be the one to have that conversation with you. Even after She faltered, shame briefly crossing her features. After what I said at the barbecue. About your son not having a father. Even after that. Stephanie studied me with new awareness, as though truly seeing me for the first time. Why? Why would you show such consideration when I've been nothing but cruel to you? The question hung in the air between us, honest and raw in a way none of our previous interactions had been. Because cruelty doesn't cancel cruelty, I said finally. And because I try to be the kind of person I want my son to become. Something shifted in Stephanie's expression, not quite acceptance, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. She turned back to Kyle. I need time to process all this. And we need to talk about the boys, about practical arrangements. Her voice was steadier now, the initial shock giving way to pragmatism. But not here. Not in her house. Kyle nodded. I'll be at the residence inn on Westbrook. When you're ready to talk, just call me. Stephanie stood, straightened her rumpled blouse with as much dignity as she could muster, and moved toward the door. She paused with her hand on the knob, not quite looking at me. Thank you, she said stiffly, for not turning me away from your door this morning. It wasn't an apology for years of condescension and recent slander, but it was acknowledgement. For now, that was enough. After she left, Kyle thanked me profusely, gathered his few belongings, and departed for the hotel. I watched from the window as he drove away, hoping both Millers would find peace after the initial trauma subsided. The following weeks brought significant changes to our neighborhood. Kyle moved into a small apartment downtown and began the careful, painful process of rebuilding relationships with his sons. Jason returned to the Miller house, but visited his father regularly. Aiden maintained his distance initially but gradually began limited contact. Stephanie retreated from social life temporarily, canceling her usual summer gathering and stepping down from the neighborhood association board. When she re-emerged, she seemed different, more subdued, less concerned with projecting perfection. The rumors continued briefly, of course. Some neighbors speculated that I'd known about Kyle's sexuality all along and had used it as leverage somehow. Others suggested a bizarre love triangle. Jessica Taylor steadfastly defended me, and eventually, as more accurate information circulated, the gossip lost its momentum. 3 months after that fateful barbecue, I was surprised to receive an invitation to a small dinner party at Jessica's house. More surprising still was the guest list, which included both Kyle and Stephanie, now legally separated, but apparently able to be in the same room. Are you sure about this? I asked Jessica when she dropped by to personally extend the invitation. It was Stephanie's idea, actually, she replied. She specifically asked if you would come. Curious and slightly apprehensive, I accepted. The evening was initially awkward, with careful conversation about safe topics, the unusually warm fall, the high school's football season, and upcoming community fundraiser. Kyle, looking healthier than I'd ever seen him, spoke animatedly about his new position at a different firm. Stephanie, wearing less makeup and simpler clothing than her former style, mentioned volunteer work at a women's shelter. After dinner, while the others chatted over coffee in the living room, Stephanie approached me on Jessica's patio. I owe you an apology, she said without preamble. Several, actually. That's not necessary. It is, she interrupted. I was horrible to you from the moment you moved to our neighborhood. I looked down on you for being a single mother, for your job, for your house, for everything that didn't match my narrow definition of success. I hadn't expected such forthright acknowledgement and wasn't sure how to respond. I was insecure, she continued. I think I always sensed something was wrong in my marriage, but instead of facing it, I doubled down on the perfect facade. I needed to believe my life choices were superior to validate them. That's remarkably self-aware, I said finally. She gave a wry smile. 6 months of intensive therapy will do that. Her expression grew serious again. What I said about your son not having a father was inexcusable. Ethan is a remarkable young man, which speaks volumes about your parenting. Thank you. That means a lot. The irony is, I thought I was protecting my sons by maintaining our perfect family, even as I sensed it was built on something false. But all I did was teach them that appearances matter more than authenticity. We stood in companionable silence for a moment, watching lightning bugs illuminate Jessica's garden. Carl told me something that stuck with me, Stephanie said. He said that when you discovered his secret, you could have used it against me, but instead you chose compassion. That you saw the human beings behind the scandal. She turned to face me directly. I'm trying to learn from that example. 6 months after that conversation, our neighborhood had settled into a new normal. Kyle's apartment became a second home for both his sons. Stephanie sold the Colonial and bought a smaller house closer to her parents. I hosted my own neighborhood gathering, nothing fancy, just hamburgers and homemade ice cream, and was touched when both Millers attended separately, each bringing a dish to share. As the party wound down, Ethan helped me clear plates from the backyard. You know what's weird, Mom, he said, stacking empty cups. If Mrs. Miller hadn't been so nasty at that barbecue, none of this would have happened. Jason might never have shown me those screenshots. Mr. Miller might still be living a lie. Sometimes painful moments lead to necessary truths, I reflected. Though I wish it hadn't been so hard on everyone involved. I'm proud of how you handled everything, Ethan said suddenly, with the straightforward sincerity of teenagers. You could have gone full revenge mode when you found out about Mr. Miller, especially after how Mrs. Miller treated you. But you didn't. I'm proud of you too, I told him. You showed real maturity through all of this. As the sun set on our modest backyard, I felt a deep sense of peace. The past 6 months had been challenging, even painful at times, but they'd also reinforced what truly mattered: integrity, compassion, and the courage to face difficult truths. Stephanie's cruel comment at the barbecue, "At least my baby has a father," had once stung deeply. Now it seemed like a distant echo from another life. Her perfect family had been an illusion, while my imperfect one was built on something real and lasting. Being a single mother wasn't a failure or a compromise. It was simply one way of creating family, one that had produced a son with both strength and compassion, one that had taught both of us to value authenticity over appearance. In the end, perhaps that was the most important lesson of all. Thank you all for listening to my story. If you've ever judged someone based on appearances or been judged unfairly yourself, I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and growth, and share with someone who might need a reminder that sometimes the strongest families aren't the ones that look perfect from the outside. Remember, We never truly know what's happening behind closed doors, so lead with kindness whenever possible. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.